Thursday, September 27th, 2018, Monaco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. This morning I'd like to talk about a couple of things. First, I'll talk about the Fed Chairman Jay Powell and his background. And I want to talk about the gold-silver ratio and why I actually think that we're very similar in terms of cycle to where we were in the beginning of 2016, just after gold and silver bottomed. And I'll look into that chart. I'll also look at into the market, of course, what we're doing this morning. It's around 8:20 a.m. But as I did the other day, I'm going to start out with the Jay Powell story first, look at the gold silver ratio and some of the charts, and then I'll look at what the markets are doing. And what's the reason why I'm looking at Jay Powell, the Fed chairman? Some people call him the Fed chair, but I mean, a chair is what I sit in. A chairman is a chairman. He's the chairman. But it's probably because you couldn't call a woman nowadays a chairman, but you could call her a chairwoman and a man a chairman. So anyway, of course, yesterday, Jay Powell announced that the Fed raised rates to 2%, from a range 2% to 2.25%, that they're going to raise again in December, and that they're going to raise 3 times in 2019 and 1 time in 2020. To me, I know rates are still really low. Of course, the Fed printed a lot of money in the last 10 years. They kept rates at zero for almost 7 years or thereabouts. And of course, it was a hugely accommodative experiment. And it's something that had never been done before. And even the people on Bloomberg, I listened to them a little bit yesterday, they're saying that no one knows where we are. And here we have a Fed chairman that's continuing to raise rates fairly aggressively compared to the previous chairwoman, Yellen, and Ben Bernanke. And he's expecting things to be okay. And do I really think that Jay Powell is that stupid not to know that the U.S. economy is actually not doing great? I mean, even the people on Bloomberg, all the mainstream economists, ex-Fed Vice Chairman Blinder, were saying, yes, America is not feeling this supposed improvement in the economy, the stock market, and all the wealth being created. They even admitted is not trickling down, and they even said we get a lot of mail, a lot of people contacting saying that there's still 95 million people out of the workforce. How can you say that unemployment is at an all-time low? And they even say, well, it's because that's what the Fed uses to report. That's what the Fed is reporting. So even these people, mainstream economists, commentators, don't believe this Goldilocks great economy scenario. And even President Trump is playing along with it. So what's going on? Is Jay Powell the man who's going to pull the plug on the economy? Is he the demolition guy? I think he could be. And he sounds very reasonable. He talks about serving the American public. And maybe to some extent he might. But I actually think he's serving the deep state. And you just have to look at his background. I mean, and who was the guy who nominated Jay Powell? Well, it was Donald Trump. He could have nominated anyone else. He could have nominated Ron Paul and have Ron Paul shut down the Fed the first day he took over. And also he could have written an executive order to abolish the Fed with Ron Paul in charge. But no, he chose Jerome Powell. So one of the first interesting things that I saw when I looked into him on Wikipedia is that his net worth is around $110 million. So he's not a poor man. The other thing is his career. So let's have a look. And I'll start from the beginning, just read everything. 1979, Powell moved to New York City and became a clerk to Judge Ellsworth Van Graffeland of the United States Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit. From 81 to 83, Powell was a lawyer with Davis, Polk, and Wardwell. And from 1983 to 84, he worked at the firm of Warble and Macmillan. So he started out in the legal profession, and then 1984 to 1990, this is starting to get interesting. Powell worked at Dillon Lead and Co., an investment bank where he concentrated on financing, merchant banking, and mergers and acquisitions, rising to the position of vice president. Well, that's where so the lady from Solari Report is from, I forgot her name now, yeah, she worked there as well. I'll remember it later. From 1990 to 1993, Powell worked in the department, in the United States Department of the Treasury, at which time Nicholas Brady, the former chairman of Dillon Reed and Co., was the United States Secretary of the Treasury, while who was the president at the time? George Herbert Walker Bush. In 1992, Powell, Catherine Austin Fitts. Catherine Austin Fitts was probably a colleague of Mr. Powell. In 1992, Powell became the Undersecretary of the Treasury for Domestic Finance after being nominated by, guess who? George Herbert Walker Bush. During his stint at the Treasury, Powell oversaw the investigation and sanctioning of Salomon Brothers after one of its traders submitted false bids for a United States Treasury security. Powell was also involved in negotiations that made Warren Buffett the chairman of Salomon. Warren Buffett. 1993, do you think Warren Buffett owed Powell something? Is it any wonder that Powell is worth so much now, 110 million? Well-connected guy. In 1993, Powell began working as a managing director for Bankers Trust. Bankers Trust, who took over? The Bankers Trust was the biggest derivatives bank on Wall Street. Who took over most of its book? Deutsche Bank. But he quit in 1995 after the bank got into trouble when several customers suffered large losses due to derivatives. He went back to Dillon Reed. This is the most important, interesting one that I think. And from 1997 to 2005, Powell was a partner at the Carlyle Group, where he founded and led the industrial group within the Carlyle U.S. Buyout Fund. So who was involved in the Carlyle Group? Well, Papa Bush. John Major became chairman of the European arm of Carlyle Group. Carlyle Group is basically a private equity firm. They buy private firms. They do buyouts. They like buying things on the cheap, right? They would probably love to see a collapse of everything so they could go in there, and they have their men at the helm. They'll know when things are going to start, getting worse, and they'll make, they'll buy things for pennies on the dollar. And there's even this, and just remember that he was there from 1997 to 2005. And this is what happened in September 11th, 2001. And George W. Bush says, my dad was meeting the brother of Osama bin Laden on September 11, 2001. So why was he meeting the brother of Osama bin Laden in September 11, 2001? Well, I'll read here. It says, confirmed by the Washington Post. Well, it's not fake news. Fellow investors of the Carlyle Group, including Osama's brother, Shafiq bin Laden, and W's dad, former President George Herbert Walker Bush, met in the plush surroundings of the Ritz-Carlton Hotel in Washington, D.C. on September 10 and 11, 2001. Their business encounter under the auspices of the Carlyle Group was unfortunately interrupted by September 11 by the 9/11 attacks. It goes on to say, it didn't help that as the World Trade Center burned on September 11, 2001, the news interrupted the Carlyle Business Conference at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel, here attended by a brother of Osama bin Laden, former President Bush, a fellow investor, had been with him at the conference the previous day. So this is the kind of guy we've got at the helm of the Federal Reserve. There's more stuff here about the Carlyle Group. You might want to check out Carlyle Group, Bush connection to Bin Laden, Carlyle Group and the Bush family exposed. So this is the guy who's running the Federal Reserve now, who's worth $110 million. And you look at the timeline of the Carlyle Group. It was founded in 1987. It says it was founded as a global alternative asset manager. And it says that it started with only $5 million in capital. It might sound a lot of money, but it's not that much for, you know, a business with these connected people. Former president Frank Carlucci, 1992. Who was Frank Carlucci? He was the head of the Department of Defense under Papa Bush. He was chairman of the Carlyle Group from 1992 to 2003. Oh, wow, they've got $13 billion in assets. So they've gone from 5 million in 1987 to 13 billion. Wow, they've done really well. Is it because they're really good at looking at investments? Maybe partly. Is it that they're really well connected to government and all these contracts for war and rebuilding countries they destroy? Probably. So here we have the head of the Federal Reserve, heavily connected to these people. And he's, in my opinion, he's the one who's been chosen to bring everything down. And that's why he's raising interest rates like this, knowing that it will cause a huge problem. He pretends that the economy is doing well. You know, as I said, he's not stupid not to know, like many people know, that this is just the stock market, funny money that's making things look good. Trump picked him. So you be the judge of what Trump is really doing. And I know Trump has criticized him heavily. I think even yesterday he said he was not happy with the rate hikes, but he could always fire him. And maybe it's just a cover to pretend that what's this guy doing? And he picked him. What about the gold-silver ratio? Well, I wanted to show you this chart. It looks like we've topped in the gold-silver ratio. We're back below the level, the top from March 26, well, just before March 2016. And that was the last time the gold-silver ratio, spiked quite a bit. And you notice that that was despite the fact that gold and silver had bottomed in December of 2015. And I noticed also that gold bottomed on December 4th and silver bottomed a bit later. But and then gold outperformed silver throughout that, just after the bottom in precious metals in December 2015. Silver didn't bottom, bottom a little later. I think the bottom was last week, but that ratio started, kept going higher, and now it's turned around. So is the bottom in for precious metals? We'll have to see. As I said yesterday in my live stream, you need to worry about how many ounces or grams of gold and silver you have. Not to worry so much about the fiat money price, but it's interesting to look at the technicals, of course, as well. So now let's look at the prices. So I've been going on for a while, but let's just see what we're doing. It's already 8:30 a.m. Spot gold 1196 up 2. Range has been 1193.50 to 1199. After the Fed yesterday during the press conference, gold dropped to 1190. So it's holding up fairly well. Silver 1438 up 6, so outperforming gold this morning, up 0.4%. The Dow is down 34, 26,359. S&P is down 2 3/4. NASDAQ is down 3 points. So all the stock markets are a little weaker at the moment. The futures. Currencies are also weaker. The pound is down 1/3%, 131.18. Euro is down 1/4 at 117.08. And the dollar is a little weaker against the yen at just 6 pips, 116.20, 112.64. Sorry. So gold and silver are holding up quite well despite the dollar strength. Oil is continuing to move higher. The WTI is 72.42, up 1.2% overnight. Brent is almost up to 82. Now it's 81.70, up 1.1%. Dollar is unchanged against the yuan, 687.60. Yeah, and the 10-year yield did drop yesterday. We're now at 303. I think we were at 309 before the Fed. So that has dropped a bit. Maybe and why did that happen? You know, even though the Fed raised interest rates. Well, don't forget, the interest rate they raised was the short-term rate. It was already priced in, and if anything, it could put a dampener on the economy, and maybe that's why, you know, people bought back the 10-year and the yields dropped. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share it, subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet. You can also follow me on Steemit, DTube, Twitter, and BitTube. And yeah, thanks for watching. Take care. Have a good day. Well, that was Billy, actually. He just came down, and he's ready to go out for a walk. Take care again. Bye.